Hello.
Hello.
I think we are live again.
We are live.
Welcome back. This is Book Chats with Mostly Books. I'm Jody.
I'm Jen.
And I don't feel like we have any housekeeping before we dive in. Do we have housekeeping?
We're back on Facebook.
We're back on Facebook. We decided to come here again.
So we'll look at comments at the end.
And of course, because we're filming it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, leave comments. We will comment back later.
Yep.
All right. So tonight we are talking about Alexis Henderson's The Year of Witching.
Of the Witching. Is it Of the Witching or The Witching?
Oh, it is Of the Witching.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why I struggle with this title. I always think it's Witchling, and I have no idea why I think that. It's not. The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. That's what we're chatting about. Do you want to give us a synopsis?
Yeah. So Emmanuelle lives in a Puritan-esque town called Bethel, and she is the daughter of a woman, or her father was burned for witchcraft, and she is of mixed race. And her mother, there's a whole lot of drama with her mother that we're going to talk about, but the point is the rest of the town doesn't like her.
And her mother has passed away.
So she one night goes into this dark wood that like surrounds the town, and everyone's like, don't go in there, witches live in there. Going in there is like falling off the path, so to speak.
I enjoyed that.
But she does one night. She feels drawn to the forest, and part of that is because her mother spent time in there. So she goes in there, and these two witches give her her mother's journal. And that's where it all kind of starts to go nuts. Mm-hmm. Where she learns about her mother, learns about the powers her mother interacted with, and how that has affected her life, and foretold dangers.
The future demise of
Bethel. So she's like, cool, I have to stop that and also figure out, like, why do I have weird powers? So, yeah.
I think that's a pretty good synopsis.
Like, once she finds the journal, I'm like, okay, don't say this spoiler, but everything just, it's the point where everything just kind of hits the fan.
Yeah, I know. I was wondering how you were going to do that. You handled it well.
Thank you.
It was good. So, yeah, what'd you think?
I really liked this book. I really liked it. I saw it on the shelf that we'd gotten it in, and I'm like, hey, we should read this. And you're like, oh yeah, I want to read this too. Mm-hmm. It has witch in the title. So I've been very excited for this one, and I was not disappointed.
Good.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
What do you think?
I have mixed feelings, as I sometimes do. Parts of it I really like. Mm-hmm. Parts of it really reminded me of The Crucible. And evidently I have some Crucible baggage. Because it did irritate me a smidgen. Overall, I probably, it was a good read. It wasn't a great read for me. I was like, okay. And again, I feel like that's just my hang-up personally.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm always looking for, because whenever I take a book that's sort of Crucible-esque, like Puritan setting, I think I just always have different expectations. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure what those expectations are, which is so not fair to the book. But I'm always like, okay.
This isn't what I wanted, but I don't know what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So, no fault to the book. It's all me. But parts of it I really liked. You said it was going to be at least a second book? Yeah,
I went to the author's Instagram profile after I finished the book, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I can look at stuff without spoilers. I saw a picture that she's working on an as of yet untitled sequel.
Which will be interesting to see where this goes.
Yes.
Because in some ways it wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay with it being a standalone, which I thought it was.
Yeah, it like wraps up the story that we get, but there's stuff
we could have more of.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see what the second book is going to be about, to see if I read the second book.
Because I'm definitely going to read it.
Jen's definitely going to. So if you tell me to read it.
Yes, and I'll actually like look forward to its release and not just like find it on the shelf one day.
Randomly walk to it, yes. All right, start with characters.
Or writing?
Like to do. Either way is good.
Characters?
Let's do characters.
Okay.
What'd you think of Emmanuelle?
I liked her.
I did too.
I really liked her.
She's a really great, fierce character.
Yeah, I also just really love biracial main characters. They're
That's
important
fair.
to me. They live rent-free in my head.
That's cute. I like that phrase.
I really liked her. She's very it strikes a nice balance between you like wanting like a more modern heroine, but then realizing that doesn't fit in their setting. So there's a lot she has to like unlearn and like see that like this isn't how I should be thinking, or this wasn't true that I've thought my whole life. So there's a lot of that which I liked, and she like strikes this nice balance of like being smart, but also there's things she doesn't know and are kept from her, and like being determined and caring and all those things.
You know what I found to be her most interesting characteristic is how determined she was to save the people who were basically scorned her and her family. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, she really was like, nope, I have to save them regardless of what it costs me. If it's cost my life, that's the price I pay. And I was just like, wow, that's pretty noble. And it wasn't done in like a, like...
She's not like annoyingly self-righteous.
Yeah, it was not self-righteously done in any way. You really were like, okay, I can totally root for this.
It's like she took like the good tenets of like the service, the good parts of the service tenet in their religion, and just like ran with that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's a few characters I want to talk about. Is there any one like you're just itching? I bet it's Ezra.
Emmanuel and Ezra are like my favorite two in this book. I love them both very dearly.
I also liked Ezra. He was a good, I think he's a good like partner for her in whatever schemes they're going to be up to.
Yeah, like their first interaction, she makes an irreverent joke, and then he laughs at it, and I'm like, okay, well, you two are everything I want, so like this is fine.
Yeah, and I guess we should state that, you know,
who is Ezra, first of all?
Yep, exactly. So Ezra is the prophet, which is their, you know, Bethel's leader. It's his heir.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of his sons. It's not his only son, but
it's his first son, isn't it? No, he's an older brother.
It's not his first son. It's just the one that will be taking over for him, even though he's not his favorite son. That's a thing.
I wondered about that, but yeah. Anyways.
So Ezra comes from a very prestigious family, whereas Emmanuel is kind of more on the fringes. I mean, they're not lower.
Well, they kind of are now,
but they're not much higher. Yeah. Exactly, because of the whole situation with her mom. And dad, yes. And so really it's noteworthy to say, I guess, that not only did Ezra laugh at her joke, but he really like bonded with her even though her status isn't his, which made him endearing immediately.
And he's also like, he's very skeptical of the society they live in and like how it functions, because there's a point where they see a young woman in like stocks, in market stocks basically, and like Emmanuel say, it's like in her narration, it's like, oh, she's in there for this, and then says something else, and then he's like, oh, this is just another day in the good father's work, and she's like, wait, you can't say that,
right? And
just like, oh, okay, so someone has their eyes open.
And I also really liked that he was encouraging her book habit, which seemed like cute. Something that wouldn't have necessarily been encouraged for women. And he was like, oh, what book do you want? Maybe I can help you out.
But even then she's like, you're just giving me a book to buy my silence. And he's like...
Yeah. He's like, I'm trying, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I too loved Ezra. They are sweet together. We won't say anything else on that. Anybody else that you're itching to talk about? Because I have a couple others otherwise.
Characters that aren't spoilery? Talk about Leah.
That was my next one, too.
Okay, yeah.
You know, you had interesting feelings towards Leah. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I didn't trust her at first, because I'm like, she's too nice. And it's like, she's like very much part of the flock, like buys into all of it, isn't skeptical of it at all in a way, and or isn't critical critical in her thinking of it. And I was just like, I don't like how this is going. Like, you could easily like betray your best friend, even though she is like the only person she is Emmanuel's only friend. But I'm like, I don't know if I trust you. And then we find something out about her. Is it
the big something, or is it the other something? Like what? Okay, I'll tell you my something later. In a moment. Not like later. Okay, go ahead.
We find out something, and that kind of like changes what you think of her a little bit, but also then I'm like, oh goodness, but you still don't see. And then something else happens. It's a whole thing.
I actually never had those feelings about Leah.
I know you didn't. I was very skeptical.
Because you were really skeptical, and I was more like, well, I'm more skeptical about Ezra.
I was waiting for him to turn out to be awful.
I was waiting for him to turn out to be awful, too, and, like, setting her up. Like, I was like, is this a, like, get close to find out what's happening kind of thing?
Spying.
Yeah, I was happy it wasn't. But I never felt weird about Leah, especially because, like, you know, she, yes, was very much part of the flock and believed all of the Kool-Aid that was given.
Know where that comes from?
The cults?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like this was sort of cultish. It was an intentional phrasing.
Yeah. Okay.
However, she did think a little bit progressively in the sense that she did teach Emmanuel how to swim, even though that was forbidden. So I was kind of like, see, you're not terrible yet. And yet, for some reason, Ezra, I was always kind of until the middle of the book on the fence about.
Yeah.
Never did anything to make me really think that.
He didn't really do anything to deserve it. And neither really did Leah. I was just like, I just feel like we were both waiting to be set up. Yeah, I'm like, you're too good. And that usually does not bode well.
Right. I totally get that. Do we want to talk about the prophet more?
Ugh, do we have to?
Nope, we can totally skip over
He's another
him.
bad dad.
I know, right? That was what I thought too. Like, oh, another one.
Are we surprised though?
No. And then not only is he like an actual dad, but then like the leader of this community. I mean, they're all, I guess, have been leaders too. Oh, yeah, that's a thing.
That's very much a thing.
Needless to say, the prophet we are not fans of, and is very much about keeping the society the way it is and keeping the men in control, other people down where he thinks they should be. Yeah, we don't like him.
We do not.
I don't feel like we need to say anything else.
Ezra doesn't either, and that's his own dad. It's so great.
They don't have a lot of love, those two, for each other.
No, but I just thought, like, Ezra's, like, hates his dad and, like, doesn't care that his dad knows that.
But I feel like it's mutual, because everybody knows Ezra's not the favorite son.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't feel like his dad hid that either from him.
Oh, no.
Do you want to talk about Emmanuel's family, like Martha and Anne? Is Anna or Anna? Anna? Anna, I think. And Abram. No. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Abram. And her...
Honor and Glory.
Yep.
So they are... Abram is her grandfather. Her mother, Miriam, was Abram's daughter. And after Miriam, like... Should I tell, like, why? It's pretty early on, given, like, why Miriam... They don't like Miriam.
I think that's fair. I think that sets up right in the beginning as well.
Yeah,
yes,
so Miriam was engaged to the current prophet, Grant, who we don't like. And then on the night before her wedding, she like tries to stab him and like draws blood and then runs into the dark wood.
Go Miriam.
Yeah. And then like 9 months later or some months later, she comes back like very pregnant, about to give birth, and then that's the night.
Is that, I was unclear on when...
How many months it was she is in the forest.
Yes, and when her, when Emmanuel's father is killed. Mm-hmm.
He's killed before she tries to stab the prophet.
That's what I was thinking, because that all comes to light. Can we talk about that? Maybe that's spoilery?
Well, he's tried for witchcraft and found guilty because there's no other way these trials end. And burned at the stake. Or at the pyre.
Right. And then she was going to marry the prophet. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't remember how many months it was. It's at least a winter, so at least a few.
3, 4, 5. Who knows?
At least some amount of months.
Depends where they live.
She's in the woods and she comes back about to give birth, and that's the night Emmanuel is born, and also the night her mother dies. Yeah. So the whole town is like, Abram was an apostle, and so he gets that title stripped. They get their land kind of subdivided, so they're subsisting on their farm.
Yeah, they were pretty ostracized at this point.
Yeah, so that's...
But, then, Abram and Martha decide to raise her still. Mm-hmm. So she does... I initially liked her family a lot. Actually, Abram really grows on me.
Abram does grow on you.
Like, he just seems like, even though he's quite ill at this point, really. But he just seems like kind of a big old teddy bear guy.
Yeah, he's like very gruff on the surface, but he, like, what he does, like, speaks more than what he says.
And I think he always, really cherished Emmanuel. Martha.
You have mixed feelings on Martha. Like, Martha
Yeah.
wants the best for her, but how she goes about that, like,
May not be.
is not, like, to the reader at least, is not the best way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And Anna was just kind of there.
Yeah.
I have no real, feelings on that. I liked the girls, although we didn't really get to know them. Honor and Glory,
they're very sweet.
I guess they would be her aunts.
Yeah.
Even though they're much younger.
Because Martha and Anna are Abram's wives.
Yes.
And then Honor and Glory are Anna's kids.
Yes. That was also a whole thing, too. The wives.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Any characters we should talk about now before it gets too spoilery? Because there's a few I'd like to maybe talk about, but I don't want to get too into that
Should
yet.
we talk about the religion?
Sure.
Because that's kind of important.
We could totally talk about the religion.
So, Bethel's religion is, like, very Puritan-esque. There's the Holy Father, and he's, like, associated with light and purity, fire, brimstone, that all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's... Yeah, basically that's not, like, the hard part to understand. And then the counterpoint is the Dark Mother and her religion-esque. So that's where we get our witches.
Mm-hmm.
They are the Dark Mother's children.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole myth in there, but I don't want to, like, get into too many of the spoilers of it.
Yeah, I think you've said enough.
Yeah, so it's like whatever. So the father is like purity, righteousness, all this good stuff. So then the Dark Mother is like
opposite.
carnality, evilness, wickedness, that sort of thing.
Yep, light, dark.
Yep.
It's right there in the name. So, yep. Anything else? I feel like we should just maybe keep going.
I like the writing of this book. I thought it moved well for like what was going on. I liked how it was split into parts as well
4
as
parts,
chapters.
Oh, I loved the beginnings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The chapters each have like an epitaph or a short bit from some sort of text in the world. So some of them are like entries from Miriam's diary.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're like past letters between Miriam and Daniel or Holy Scripture verses.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
Yeah, I liked that part a lot. I really liked the writing. Her writing is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it moves really well. I didn't ever feel bogged down or like slowed down in any way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I liked the writing. And it captured the essence of the Puritan world, but it didn't necessarily capture the writing tone, which I really appreciated. 'Cause I am not a fan of that writing time.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
So, yeah. Can we do spoilers?
Yes, can we do spoilers?
Yes.
Okay, we are doing spoilers now. There are a lot.
Mm-hmm. So turn us off.
Turn us off.
This is me saying turn off.
This is go away.
Go away.
But kindly.
But come back and see us later when you've read the book. Okay. I think that's enough time.
Yeah.
So what do you want to dive in and spoil first?
I don't know. What do you want? You pick.
Okay, so the witches. I really liked the witches.
Mm-hmm.
I wish so much that we saw more of them than just the little bits that we saw in the forest and then the end, obviously, where they like battle it all out, because I want to know their backstories. And I'm kind of like you and hoping maybe the second book will really go into that, because that was not enough. And did you think it was interesting that the one's name is Lilith, and you know the whole thing with
Adam and Eve and Lilith?
Yeah. Like that was
vaguely.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you needed to know. Like, I
know,
feel like that was very appropriately done.
Yeah. I like the witches too. They were like the right level of like inhuman for me.
Yes, I could see that for you.
Like they were creepy, but also like there are human things about them.
Their eyes were so creepy.
Yeah.
Like not really there. Actually, everything about them was pretty creepy.
And like there's something off. I realized this like the further I got in the book. Like, at first I thought it was going to be, like, very humanizing to the witches, and we were, like, going to see more of them, but then as it went on, I'm like, there's something not right with that. Like, well, the book's not leading us there, but also just how they were described the first time. There's something wrong with them.
With the witches?
Yeah. Like, how they're described, like, corpses.
Yes.
I was like, there's something not right here. I can't... The vibes are wrong.
I totally agree with that. And did you decide why that was?
I don't know. It's just that it makes sense now, I think. Like, why they are the way they are.
In the sense that you think they went crazy because of their vengeance?
That, and that what I was expecting from them doesn't make sense with, like, how they were first described.
Okay, sorry. I was just unclear.
Kind of both, but, like, yeah.
I felt like... Okay, so I kind of thought they were sort of corpse-esque because of in the sense that they were defeated in that battle. Like, this is all the power they have remaining. And so it's not where it's supposed to be level-wise, which makes them sort of like, not like half, like not dead, but they're kind of like half.
Not dead, not alive.
Yeah, because they don't have their full powers. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of curious what their full powers look like, and if they will look different if they had all that and hadn't been, like, demolished and forced into the dark woods.
So, I'm going to jump right to the end and then go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
So, it ends up, Emmanuel ends up defeating them with the help of Ezra and her grandmother, who we will talk about, because she's wonderful. So, she kills the witches. At least, the witches, as far as we know, are dead.
Again. Well, I guess they weren't dead before. They were just diminished.
But...
And now they are dead.
Now they are probably dead. Mm-hmm. But then we learn throughout this that the witches have been, like, driven mad with vengeance and bloodlust and, like, seeing and, like, injury of, like, what this town has been doing to women. Mm-hmm. And that is, like, what's driven them to be terrible. So the whole Bethel is being like, oh, the witches are terrible, they're bad, they're evil, but they made them that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, even from the very beginning when they pushed them there and killed them off, well, their flock. I mean, they didn't have a flock, but whoever was following them to begin with. Yeah, I mean, they did. They killed them and did it. Agreed.
Bethel made its own monsters.
Yeah. And then just continued.
Yeah.
They learned
nothing
and continued and then are surprised when, you know, the reckoning comes. I mean, come on now. You created that. Can we talk about the plagues?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the plagues or?
You can.
Okay, great. Thanks. So there are 4 plagues that are prophesied to come in Miriam's journal, right?
I don't know that that's what they are until
the first plague happens. And then Emmanuel's like, oh.
Like, oh, crap.
I see what's happening. So the 4 plagues are blood, blight, slaughter. Nope. Blood, blight, darkness, slaughter. I can get it in the right order. So the first one hits the blood. And, you know, the first part of the book, I don't know if that's how we start. Does it say that for part 1?
Yeah.
Is blood? Okay.
I think so. I didn't realize.
Oh, yeah. Because that makes perfect sense now that I've reread that. Because, man, that first section is bloody. Not even, like, when the plague hits. But, like, in that first scene where they're all taking, like, their communion. But it's, like, the blood of the lamb, and they're like licking the blood off. That part was pretty grody, if you want my opinion. I was like, okay, that's
content warning for blood.
The tone, yeah. But anyway, the first plague hits with blood, which meant that all the water was turned to blood.
Yeah, I think it was that well was turned to blood, and then it infected the groundwater.
Yeah, and so they were like harvesting their rainwater and what have you, and that's when Emmanuel was like, okay, Mom said this was going to happen.
I need to fix this.
Somehow I started this, but now I need to fix. Do we need to talk about that?
We can.
I don't know. I think the big thing is to note that Emmanuel always thought she started the curses and plagues.
It's a little 100,000 kingdoms.
Yes, that was totally it. Totally it. Okay, and then blight comes after, like, she cut her arm and went back into the pond.
Yeah, so Emmanuel, like, this is like when her and Ezra bond too. Like, they both do some research on witchcraft and like how to end this thing, but he's like, why are you looking into this? And she's like kind of not telling him, but he's like, okay, I'll trust you, I guess.
Yeah.
So they go into the forest to like do this blood sacrifice to end the plague, which they don't know it's not going to be the only one, really.
She thinks that, but she's hoping that if she does a blood sacrifice in the pond again,
it'll end the whole thing.
That will appease the witches.
Yeah. So she does that, and it seems to work for a few weeks until blight.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically that seems like a moot point. Like, it really didn't do anything. Is that kind of really your takeaway?
Kind of. Like, I think she might have... Because it seems that was a plague that... Would it have run its course otherwise? I'm not sure.
Yeah, because the other ones kind of just ended, like blight did. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, so yeah, the blight hits where they kind of are getting fevers and they go mad and... like start self-injuring, or they perish from the fever,
or they're comatose and like they don't wake up.
Yeah, and so her little aunts, I'm going to call them little aunts because they're little.
She calls them her sisters.
She does, but yeah, that's a thing. Anyway, so her sisters, aunts, come down with blight, and that was pretty sad and traumatic. And so that was pretty intense, I felt.
Yeah, because Honor is like comatose and like sleeping through her fever, and Glory is like hysterical and rabid.
I had it in my head the other way around. Yeah.
It is that way, right?
I had it the other way.
Because Glory's the one she finds sleepwalking,
totally
and she like knocks her head against the door.
I think you're totally correct.
Okay.
I don't know why I just switched their names in my head. So that was a thing. And then that doesn't... Did we have a reason why that ended? Because then she and Ezra leave temporarily.
They try to. Wait, no.
And darkness hits at that point.
Yeah. They try to. Well, Blight also kills Leah. Sort of. Or like it like
sort of
precipitates her death.
Okay, let's come back to the Leah thing because that's a thing
that
we should talk about. Anyway, so yes. Then darkness comes, and that's literally exactly what it sounds like. No sun, no starlight, no moon. It's just dark.
I thought people were going to start going blind.
I did too. Because I was like, you think it's going to be the sun, but you don't know.
Yeah, I was like, I think it's going to be this, which means it's going to be something else.
And at this point, were you thinking, gosh, is this just contained to Bethel? Bethel, thank you. Or is it the world? Because they obviously don't travel outside of Bethel.
Yeah. I thought it was all contained to Bethel.
I did too. So I was surprised when she got out of the gates that are enclosing Bethel, and it was still darkness.
That makes more sense, I think.
And it sounded like it was less darkness, and so like the further you got away, the further you probably got from the plagues and were less affected.
Yeah.
And the final plague is slaughter, which is really where she takes down the witches. Otherwise, they were going to take down her and slaughter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The whole place came down, literally.
Yeah, literally.
With demons and animals. And
that was cool.
That part was cool. The ending was great with that. And I loved how she retaliates.
Yep.
With the plagues herself.
So, yeah. Should we talk about, like, why it's like 100,000 kingdoms?
I wondered if you would want to dive more into that. Yes, I feel like that is we have to know why she's the curse.
Okay. So, Emmanuel, like, finds out... Well, she thinks she makes a breakthrough, and she's like, oh my god. Well, she finds... Oh, I'm all out of order.
That's okay.
She goes exploring in the Darkwood. Because she goes back to, like, her father's house in the outskirts, and then sees this forest path, and it leads to the cabin that her mother said she spent the winter in with when she was pregnant, but, like, no one was
mysterious cabin.
Yeah, that no one was ever able to find. So they're like, oh, she was sheltered with the witches. That's what it means. But, like, no, she finds this cabin, and she finds these sigils carved into the walls. One is, like, a birthing sigil.
Didn't she... Oh, okay. Emmanuel found them.
Yeah, Emmanuel found them. So one's like a birthing sigil, one is a curse sigil, and then there's one in the middle of, like, combining those two. So Emmanuel's like, okay, cool, my mother sold me out to the witches and made me their weapon.
Yep, and she did. I mean, that wasn't the intent.
Like, she did kind of, but then she finds out later from her grandmother, who we still need to talk about.
Yes.
That Miriam was, like, driven mad towards the end of her pregnancy by the witches.
Mm-hmm. And their vengeance.
And Miriam just wanted to protect her daughter and give her power that she had never had. Didn't go quite to plan.
Power that Miriam never had.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, it just continued this cycle of women in Bethel being taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. And for...
Yeah. And go ahead.
I don't know where else I'm going with that, but
it did. It continued that cycle, and she was ready to end it and now have her daughter be a part of that cycle. I'm not sure if that's where you were headed, but I mean, that was totally the intent of it.
Yeah, and that the witches even, like, bought into it. So, like, at least how I read, like, how all the curses start is that Emmanuel is, like, still a part of the cycle. It's being, like, she's being used. Mm-hmm. Her body's being used for this.
For the curse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In this holy war that, like, never seems to end.
Yes. I think her mom's intention was to not have her be that way, but because of the madness, as you're saying, well, not that as you're saying, because it's true, the madness that was created from the witches, it turned her intentions sour. Yeah. I guess. And, intention is very, very important in witchcraft, so if you don't have the right frame of mind, that's going to happen.
The whole thing, that one.
Yes.
Should we talk about
I
Vera?
say, should we talk about the grandmother? Because I feel like that's really where we should go
I
next.
love Vera.
I do too. I would really like more of her as well. So she is Danielle's mom. She was forced to watch her son burn.
And then she left.
I just can't even imagine. And then she left. And she left Emmanuel and regrets that, I feel like, too.
Well, she wanted to raise her.
But she didn't fight for her to do that.
I think Vera would have been executed if she had stayed.
Oh, absolutely. She had to have taken her and left. And I'm not sure how she would have done that.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would have walked to the Abrams and Martha's and Anna's house and done that.
Yeah.
But she did mention at one point, like, I regret not bringing you with me.
Mm-hmm.
But she was cool. She lives in the outskirts.
No, she lives in Ishmael.
Not the outskirts, sorry. I didn't mean the little outskirts in this.
Oh.
I apologize. I forget that was the name of that area of Bethel.
Yeah.
So yes, Ishmael. Yeah. And she lives with her partner, and I love that she was noted to be, like, always in menswear.
Yes, I loved it. We got cottagecore lesbians. It was great.
Cool, yeah. So I'm excited. Well, hopefully they'll have more of her.
I hope so.
Because we got such a small glimpse, but I really liked her. Like, she was a force to be reckoned with. And I wanted to know what happened in those 17 years to get her where she is. Because she was also, it seemed like, quite important in her community there.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Like, people knew her.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay.
Should we talk about Leah?
I feel like we should probably talk about Leah. Do you want to? Or you want
This is a whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it starts out, the book starts pretty early on. We're at, like, the last Sabbath, the last Sunday before Leah's wedding.
Her cutting. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, cutting, wedding, it's a whole thing. I was going to use wedding because it's, like, a not in-world fantasy term that's defined in the book.
Let's find the cutting that was important.
Yeah, so marriage ceremonies, at least to the prophet, work that the brides are cut with this 8-pointed star sigil thing between their eyes.
They carve them.
They brand them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Without the... Yeah.
No, it's a carving brand, yeah.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's very
creepy. It was horrible. And they kept talking about, like, how Leah was getting ready for this cutting ceremony. And I was like, what is the cutting ceremony? Yeah. And then when you find out, I was like, this is not okay.
I thought it was going to be, like, you tie a ribbon and then you cut it or something.
I was hoping, but considering how much blood was already talked about, I knew we weren't headed that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that happens. And then we find out, a month later, that Leah is pregnant, and not just a little pregnant. No. She's 6 months pregnant after her 1 month of marriage.
Which, that math does not add up.
No matter how you stretch that one. So Emmanuel's first response is it his? Which I get why she said that, since she's 6 months along. And it is. Yeah, it's the prophet who's been
raping her
since 13.
Yeah.
I was just
12, 13. We don't remember how that fantasy math worked out.
Yeah, that was horrible. Like, oh my gosh, and this is your leader.
Yeah. But Leah's like, he's just a man. Like, men have their faults. And I'm like,
that ain't one of them.
No.
No. It was really upsetting.
Yeah, and Emmanuel's like rightfully outraged for her friend, and ends up telling Ezra too. She's like, she like doesn't mention names or details, but she's like, make me a promise that you will protect people who can't protect themselves. And he's about to like go kill his dad at that point.
Yeah, which was cool.
Yeah. I would have been down for that.
And then poor Leah dies in it's horrendous childbirth because the prophet didn't want to have anybody come help her because, that 6 months is going to come out.
She'd had the blight and, like, had been laboring for 2 days.
2 days, but he didn't want anyone to know because he was trying to hush this up and be like, in a few months we'll just announce you had a kid.
Yeah, and I'm like, but that still doesn't make sense.
I know, I didn't think that was, whatever, but... Yeah, so poor Leah passes, and that was upsetting. And then nobody wants to claim her little girl.
Well, Martha says she doesn't have a name.
She doesn't, and Martha has the gift for names.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't know the name, what does that mean? Because she knows everyone's.
Because at first they're like, oh, the baby's dead, but no, the baby's breathing. And then Ezra kind of gets saddled with raising a child.
Yeah, him and his mom were passing him back and forth.
It seems like they care the most about cared most about Leah, like Esther, Ezra's mom, and the prophet's first wife,
who he's beating,
by the way.
Side
Ezra
note.
calls it her bruising sickness.
Heck, does that even? Yeah.
No, he was just doing it to like mouth off to his dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
That's
okay.
her. Yeah. Anyway.
But Esther was always the kindest to Leah and seems like the most like invested in caring for Leah's baby.
Do we know how many wives that prophet had? I mean, there was a lot.
I can name some of them. So it's like Esther, Leah, Judith. Hagar.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't Hagar actually the last prophet's wife?
Maybe. I thought she was in the room with...
She's in the room, but I think that she's not that prophet. I think she was the former prophet's wife, because Esther is the first wife and Hagar is much older than that.
Maybe.
Yeah. At any rate, there were a lot of wives that all seemed very catty and political too once you get married and stay in the haven.
Yeah.
That's a thing too.
I don't know where it is anymore.
It's okay. It's.
But there's a bunch.
Yeah.
It's like, I can only remember 3 to 4, but I think it's closer to 6 to 10.
I was thinking closer to 6 to 10. I was actually thinking 7. I have no idea why. So 6 to 10 is a good number. Okay, so I think my favorite part is when she harnesses the plagues. When she carves the sigil in her arm and harnesses the plagues and fights back. I thought that was so cool. Like, yes, we finally get to see her power.
Yeah, because that's what she finds out from her grandmother. Because she's like, look, I need to stop this. Like, it's killing innocents. It's killing my sisters, aunts, whatever. And she's like, and it's like partially my fault.
Yeah, I am so impressed that she was like, I'm taking ownership of this and fixing it.
Yeah. And like, Ezra does his best to help her however he can. And sometimes that means like letting her do her thing, which I was like,
which was good.
Their respect for each other was really great.
And trust in each other. You know, I liked that. Yep.
Yeah, but so she's like, I need to stop this, and her grandmother's like, well, you can carve this sigil, but you have to carve it into your arm, and you have to use a consecrated knife, so either the prophet's holy blade, his cutting knife, you can use the gutting one.
Knife.
In ceremonies. You can use David's holy sword, or you can use, like, Lilith's antler.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was going to be that.
I know, right?
But then it wasn't.
Now, was it a crown of antlers, or were they were her antlers, right?
Yeah, because she doesn't have a head. She just has a deer skull.
Right. That's what I was thinking. And then I second-guessed that into a crown for some reason just now, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's something like a crown of antlers. A crown of antlers.
Well, I was actually thinking it was a deer head. But, yeah, on her head.
Oh, but she still had a human head.
Right.
No, she had
like
no
a hat,
human head.
I guess.
She just had those black eye sockets.
Right.
The darkness.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was, yeah. Anyway, so she carves it in.
What happened to Lilith's head?
I don't know.
Did she get beheaded at some point?
Well, okay,
this
is a silly question to really get digressed on, but I need to ask. What happened to her ram that she was taking, and that's why she goes into the dark forest?
Oh, he just runs away in there.
He is beheaded in there.
Yeah.
She finds... Who beheads him?
Are you the witches?
That's all I could come up with, too. For what purpose? You never see it again. You never see anything of that poor little ram again.
They're like, oh, cool, a ram. Blood sacrifice.
Lunch!
Free blood sacrifice. I don't know.
Anyway, I was just digressed with the head thing.
You got ahead of yourself?
I got All right, heading back towards the dagger.
Yep.
So, do we want to talk about how it was the gutting dagger she ended up with? Because, of course, the prophet goes back on his word with poor Ezra, because he also has now...
yeah.
We should probably backtrack. Do we need to talk about how Ezra's now captive, Vera's now captive, Emmanuel's now captive?
He captures basically everyone she cares about and then plays them against each other.
Ezra's been shot and wounded.
He's been shot
several times, and they are not tending those wounds.
Not really. He's been shot, he's been beaten, he's been locked in the library.
Cut in his hand from the knife.
That was terrible.
Well, as much as the burning in her hand, that was also terrible.
Yeah, she also cuts her hand on a knife, so they have matching scars.
It was burnt. It wasn't.
Well, no, at the end when she.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that matching scar. Sorry. So anyway, she carves it with the gutting knife after everybody. So Ezra's going to the priors to burn. Which, did you think that was also like ridiculous that they had those burning, threatening everyone all day, every day?
They had them to like give them light. Because there's still
in
the
the
darkness.
But it seemed like they were always burning before that too. They've mentioned that. It felt like they were just always like looming in the background, like make sure you follow your scriptures.
That's what this whole society is.
I know. I didn't like that. Anyway, so Ezra's being headed off to get burned. Emmanuel's shouting, no, take me, because she wants the gutting knife. And then Martha steps in and says it too.
Well, I think at that point she's just like, don't kill him, kill me instead.
Emmanuel.
Yeah. I don't
but
think
I
it's quite about the knife
she had
yet.
wanted the knife, and I think that was partly always in the back of her head. That's my opinion, because she knew she was going to get gutted and not burned.
I don't know. At that moment, it didn't read like she had a second plan in mind. It seemed like that was such a surprise that it was just like she didn't have.
She did think she'd have more time.
Yeah,
but she wouldn't have ended then everything if she burnt.
Yeah, but I think the plan kind of went out the window at that
she
moment.
Was like,
she was like, I don't have a plan anymore because like this wasn't supposed to happen.
All right. Well, at any rate, the prophet takes her up to gut her. I guess that's what we're gonna say. Mm-hmm. And she grabs the knife and carves the sigil.
She grabs the blade. Like that's so metal. It's so painful.
So badass of her.
So but metal.
Yeah, it's not what I would have done, but well, maybe in that situation, what choices
you might not have had a choice.
It was either that or he was gonna. Anyway. And then she, because of that, is able to harness all 4 plagues inside of herself and basically
she, draws them back in.
The witches with it. And so they all die from blood, blight, darkness, and slaughter, which was really kind of a cool twist.
Yeah, Delilah starts like bleeding out of like her
orifices?
Every orifice of her body. The lovers one of them gets blight and like throws her head against something.
Yeah.
One of them is like consumed by darkness. Like it like wraps around one of the lovers, and then Lilith is slaughter, which she has to like.
And her antler is broken.
Well, she stabs her like in the chest, in the shoulder, and then like
in the head. You know, it's like a zombie. You can only attack certain areas for it to actually succeed.
Like, zombie's probably a more accurate word for them.
Right? I know. I thought it a couple times. So, needless to say, I'm curious to see how her powers either continue to grow. Does she continue to be able to?
Well, there's the recompense for having all this power. So there's still a price she has to pay.
And what is that price?
That's hanging over her head.
Yeah, we don't know. So, book 2. Maybe we'll answer those questions for us.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't know.
This is a fun talk.
Yeah, I really liked it. Because I was worried because, like, as we were reading it, I was really into it, and you're like, I have reservations. I'm not sure where this is going. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I did hold out to a long ways. Once we found out that she was the curse herself, like, was the weapon, I was like, okay, now this is really taking a good turn.
Have you reread the prologue before?
The Beast?
Yeah.
No, I should.
Well, because it's like the last line, oh no, when Manuel's born, like Miriam says, a curse, a little curse, just as she said, just as she told me, and I was like, oh my gosh, it told us this whole time, and I forgot.
You know, I kept thinking, that's funny, because I actually kept thinking about that, and specifically that Martha kept saying something about her name was a curse. Maybe it was that part, though. Maybe, and I just had it a little muddily thought out. And Emmanuel came ripping from her throat. Yeah. Finally bit out like a curse, she would be called Emmanuel. So I kept thinking about that part, but I kept thinking it was her name for some reason until you've literally just spelled that out for me.
Yeah, it like literally tells you.
Thank you.
And then like, who told you that? And she's like, the witch, the beast. And I'm like wait,
Lilith?
this is, it's just so mysterious. And then once you like learn more in the book, it's like, no, it literally told you flat out.
In
like,
the beginning.
It doesn't like hold any secrets.
Yeah, I did like the creepy dark hauntingness of this. Like, she really captured that atmosphere so well.
Like, there's a creepy dark haunting of like, you have witches in the literal dark wood, but then there's all like, lack of a better word, sins of this society that are creepy and haunting, and they haunt the people there. Like, one of the epitaphs is like, to be a woman is to be a sacrifice. Yeah. And I was like, oh my god.
There was a few of them that I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I almost took photos and sent them, but I didn't. I don't need to bombard your phone. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where the second one goes.
Something spooky happened while I was reading it. I was reading like in my chair, not at my desk, and my desk lamp was off, and then my lamp just turned on.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't have like a click wheel or switch or anything. It's just like it's a sensor.
It's a
and you touch
one?
her. Yeah, so it just turned on.
And you're like, well, that was like, startling.
That was creepy.
That was creepy. Okay, parting thoughts before we discuss what we're reading next week.
looking forward to book 2.
Yeah.
I liked it.
We'll see what comes.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the cover.
Yeah,
It's not
the cover
important,
is nice.
but as a side note. And I also liked that it was a gray hardback.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah,
why.
it's not a white hardback. That's
It's
all
not
I
white,
ask.
it's not black, it's not brown. I liked the gray. It was a nice change.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what are we reading next week?
Next week, we are reading Circe by Madeline Miller. I brought my hardcover because it's bigger.
I saw that.
So it's our Circe from the Odyssey who turns men to pigs, as she is completely justified to do. Should have turned Odysseus into a pig. Made
It's
everyone's
going to be
life
a
better.
fun chat. I'm excited already.
Oh, yes, because I cannot stand Odysseus. Cannot stand him. He's just a liar. Cannot stand him. Anyway, so it's like her story from her birth to, well, she doesn't die, through the rest of her life, and interacts a lot with Greek mythology. And
Have you read Madeline Miller's other book? I cannot remember. The Song of Achilles?
Yeah, I have read it.
I've heard really good things. One of our co-workers, Selena, it is like one of her all-time favorite books.
Yeah. I will say it's like, I really like it as a story. As a classicist, sometimes I'm just like, no, that's not, no.
That's fair. I get that with things.
I'm like, don't watch like classical movies with me, like, because I just get angry the whole time.
Yeah, I totally understand.
But yeah, I have read that one. I really like that one.
So this should be fun.
It will be fun.
Dive into a little Greek mythology.
I'll actually be able to pronounce everything, probably.
I so probably won't. But I'll try.
Yeah.
So yeah, tune in next week and we will tell you what we thought of that one.
Yep.
And of course, you can make a purchase at Mostly Books if you'd like to read ahead and not have the entire thing spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
You can call us, email us, order online. You can also order the audiobook through Libro FM if you prefer audio.
Yep.
So yeah. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.